Hey everyone. I just thought we could go through the PowerPoint together so I can do some additional explanation. And this will be the only PowerPoint that we have with footwear evidence. Everything else will be either watching videos or we're going to do a little practice lab. So this is a nice little unit that we're involved in right now. So anyway, let me make this a full screen view so that we can run through it. So the first thing that I want you all to realize is that there are some objectives that we're going to accomplish with the PowerPoint. One is, what is footwear evidence? Number two, how is it involved in crime scenes? Number three, how is it collected? And it kind of depends on the type of print that's left. But also number four, there are a variety of different ways that we can analyze all the different types of footprints that are left at a crime scene. So that's basically what we're going to focus on today as we go through this together. So first of all, what even is footwear evidence? And so footwear evidence is impression evidence that's left behind at a scene because of the particular type of footwear or shoes that an individual is wearing. So I did want you to know that footprints differ from each other, and in some respects, they can be the same. So sometimes different sizes of footprints are left behind. Sometimes there are different tread patterns associated with those footprints. Sometimes the footprints could be left by a flip flop, or maybe in other cases, it's left by a boot, or often left by athletic shoes. So there are differences, but there also are going to be maybe some similarities. I don't know if you really thought about this or not, but lots of people have the same type of shoes, the same brand of shoes. Multiple people can wear the same size of shoe. And so we're going to be talking about things that might be common to various shoes and also things that are different amongst shoes that even look very similar to one another. So, first of all, we need to get some terminology down. When a footprint or shoe print is left in something soft, like dirt or snow or mud, it leaves what's known as a 3D impression, a three-dimensional impression. And those impressions are more scientifically known as plastic prints. So it doesn't have to just even be a shoe print, any kind of an impression that's made that is three-dimensional. In other words, has three sides to it. It's called a plastic print. And I have a way that I use to help remember that. And what I think about is the fact that plastic is moldable. So, you have a plastic figurine or you have a plastic cup. There are three sides to all of those objects. It's molded that way. So when we eventually get around to taking an assessment on this information, you get kind of confused when I give you a question. Just stop and think, okay, plastic is moldable and it's three-dimensional when you make an object out of plastic. So that's what we call three-dimensional impressions, a plastic print. Now, when you get to the scene of a crime and you find a shoe print, even before you are to do anything with the shoe print at all, as shown in this photograph down here, you need to take a picture of it with a camera. And so that is in case in the process of you trying to do what's called lift this shoe print and you damage it, you have an initial record through a photograph of what the print looked like. And obviously down here is a little white structure that's a ruler, and that was put down by the forensics investigator before taking the photograph so they would have a record of the scale, also known as the size of the shoe print. So you get to the crime scene, you see a shoe print, you take a photograph of it with a ruler, and then with the 3D print, you want to make a cast. And if you remember, we made casts of our teeth when we did our odontology unit. We used plaster of Paris, which you could use here. So you mix the white powder with water to a certain consistency. You pour it into the shoe print carefully. You let it harden, and then you collect that, pull it out of the soil, and the print then is forever bound into the plaster of Paris cast. You also, too, might want to take some of the soil with you in case the soil provides evidence for the crime. So you would put that in a bag or in a box and take it back to the lab and then be able to look at it a little bit more closely. So you can make a cast out of plaster of Paris. There's also a substance called dental stone that is a little bit more expensive than plaster of Paris, but it's actually more durable and might actually preserve the detail of the shoe tread a little bit better. So it kind of depends on, what your facility can provide you with, either plaster of Paris or dental stone. So again, a plastic impression is one that's three-dimensional. It's three-dimensional because it was made in something soft. And the way that you are to preserve it is to take a photograph with a ruler first and then make a cast out of dental stone or plaster of Paris. You might encounter what's known as a two-dimensional print, something that's left on a hard surface like tile or concrete or glass, a wall, whatever would not be soft enough to let the shoe sink down into that surface. So again, this is made on a hard surface. The more scientific way of discussing a two-dimensional print is to use the term patent print. So a patent print is a print that's visible, so you can see it, but it's made on a hard surface and it's 2D. Often it's made because of someone stepping in or through a liquid like blood or paint or even water. And so it's visible, it's two-dimensional, it's made on a hard surface. And you again are going to photograph first with the ruler, and then we'll talk later about various ways that you can lift these patent prints. Now, I know that you're thinking, like, why is there an empty box here? Well, there's a reason for that. I'll tell you in just a minute. But what has happened here is there's a print in this box. You just can't see it. And if you find a print that is not visible to the naked eye, that is known as a latent print. And so latent prints are all over the place. You just don't recognize them because, again, you can't see them without finding a way to enhance them. So maybe it's a print that's made in dust or in polish or in wax, and it's kind of clear. So watch this. All of a sudden now, this print has become visible because we have done something to enhance it, to make it show up better. And again, that's going to be a topic for a little bit later in this PowerPoint presentation. So let's run back through. I know you hate when I do this, but let's run back through and just go through it one more time. So what is footwear evidence? It's evidence left by socks, feet, but generally it's left by shoes. And there are different types of shoe prints that can be left at a crime scene. Those that are plastic, three-dimensional, made in a soft surface. Those that are patent but visible, two-dimensional, left on a hard surface. And then those that are latent, meaning not visible to the naked eye, generally left on a hard surface. And again, there are ways to make those more visible. All right, I want you to check out this man. Notice he's got on a cap and dark clothing. He's trying to kind of hide himself a little bit, make it a little bit more difficult to identify who he is. He also is smart enough to wear gloves because he's not wanting to leave any fingerprints. However, he's got shoes and no covering on his shoes. So he doesn't know this, but he is leaving latent prints on these roofing tiles. And then he's breaking and entering, obviously, through this window. When he gets inside, he also will continue to make shoe prints, whether they're visible or if he accidentally steps in something and doesn't realize it and leaves the prints that way. He is going to be leaving some type of shoe print at this crime scene. So most suspects usually wear shoes and the footprints are almost always left. The question is, can the forensics investigator locate those prints and differentiate them from other prints that might be at the crime scene? So burglar, shoes, leaving evidence. All right, so why do we bother studying shoe prints? Well, they can link suspects or victims to scenes. I think you guys saw that in the forensics file episode that we watched this week, Soul Searching. They can link to crime scenes. So maybe one criminal is committing multiple crimes and continuing to wear the same shoes. So those shoe prints can link those two crime scenes or more together. Obviously, if you find shoe prints, that might allow you then to maybe go get a search warrant to investigate someone's house looking for those shoes. And while you're in their residence, maybe you locate more evidence relevant to the crime. But a lot of times shoe prints are used to refute alibis. So let's say you commit a crime, you're questioned by the police, you say, I wasn't there. I was wherever you're stating that you were. But yet if your shoe prints are there, Most likely you were there too. So to refute, to deny an alibi. I want to make sure that you guys know that I tried to get these embedded links to work on this particular presentation. And while you can see the embedded videos, you can't hear them. So in your instructions prior to watching the video presentation of the PowerPoint that you're seeing right now, I also ask that you go back and watch this particular video. There's a link there. And so this is really, really interesting. I think you'll want to watch it. It's all about gait, which is how someone walks. And a scientist has created a way to basically individualize and tell the difference between the way people walk. And they've actually used that to catch criminals. So definitely make sure you've watched that video prior to trying to complete the ed puzzle that goes along with this presentation. All right, one other kind of type of evidence that I want to talk about is evidence that's transient. This is evidence that is easily destroyed. I don't know if you're familiar with the term transient, but prior to teaching forensics, the only thing I knew about transient was it was used to describe people that did not have a permanent home, that they were kind of nomadic and they moved from one place to the other and didn't really have a permanent address. So transient means not permanent, evidence that can be destroyed. So an example of that might be a shoe print that's left in the snow. And there are ways to cast shoe prints in snow, but it's difficult because a lot of substances that you would put into the shoe print in the snow to cast it are heavy. And so they wind up damaging the shoe print. So in general, shoe prints left in snow or shoe prints left in water that would evaporate are considered to be transient evidence. Again, evidence that doesn't stay for very long or just in general can be easily destroyed. Now, you're going to also watch another video that's embedded here in a few minutes, and I have a separate link to that in this particular activity folder. But one of the things you can do is if you don't see shoe prints, you can use different kinds of lights, shining them at different angles on where you think the shoe prints are, and sometimes that will get them to show up. And if that occurs, obviously, then you want to photograph the location and photograph, obviously, the shoe print in that location. But there are other things that we can do too. So again, I keep saying this, but we'll eventually get to that information. So just a reminder, you want to make sure you photograph with a ruler everything before you go to additional testing. So this electrostatic lifting embedded video is not going to work, and I don't know why, because I've gotten things like this to work before. But again, I have a link to this in the folder, and this is really cool. They basically take a piece of Mylar, which is the same material that you might have purchased before with a helium balloon. And they lay that Mylar over the shoe print. So you can barely see a shoe print here. So you're going to lay a piece of Mylar over this. And that's Mylar, M-Y-L-A-R. And then it hooks to a device that is grounded that basically creates electricity, static electricity. And what happens is, without touching this, the static electricity makes the print jump to the Mylar film, sort of like, when you rub your hair in the winter and there's static in your house and then your hair poofs out. It's similar to that. The dust will jump to the Mylar film and then leave an impression picture on that film. And so it provides additional contrast. So if you look down here, you can see how much better you can see the detail of this shoe print with the shoe tread that you could not see up here. So again, it's called an electrostatic lifter, and it's very, very handy to forensics investigators. And again, don't forget to go watch that embedded video so you can learn more about that. All right, another thing that we can do is we can actually take fingerprint dusting powder, which I know we've not done yet, but that was one of the things that we were going to study together with fingerprints. But there's a powder that you take a brush and dip the brush lightly in the powder, shake off the excess, and then you twirl the brush over the top of the print, and that deposits powder on the print. So we can use fingerprint powder. You can also then lift that print with adhesive tape. There's also something known as a gelatin lifter that's discussed in the video that you're going to watch. And then again, always photograph. Sometimes colored wax spray can be put on a shoe print. I'm not sure if this is snow or if this is sand. Most likely it's snow. But this would then avoid you having to cast, and it would basically enhance, make the detail of the print more visible. So using colored wax spray. And then here's a picture of dental stone that is used to make the cast. And again, you can also use plaster of Paris. So this was sand, and you can see the shoe print here. They mixed the dental stone or the plaster of Paris powder with water, poured it in to the print, let it harden, and then lifted it out. And so that just creates greater detail and the better ability to analyze the print. This is cool, and you may have seen this maybe on the CSI shows. There are particular chemical sprays that can be sprayed on a shoe print, particularly if it's made out of blood. And the chemical spray binds basically to components in the blood. And then with the help of the UV light, it will cause the print to fluoresce. And then you can see the detail better, photograph it, etc. So there's something called TMB, which is tetramethylbenzidine, and then a relative of TMB, which is luminol. And this luminol is probably what you've seen a lot of on the crime scene shows. So not only helpful for just identifying bloody shoe prints, but just blood in general. That's kind of interesting. So let's talk real briefly about what are considered to be class characteristics and what are considered to be individual characteristics. If you remember, class characteristics are characteristics that can be used to narrow down the suspect pool to a smaller number of people, but are not specific enough or different enough to individualize to one person. So, for instance, a lot of people wear the same size shoe. So that may narrow it down to, let's say, 5 people out of 50. And that's better than nothing, going back and trying to investigate all of the other 50 or 45, whatever it would be, people. But lots of people wear the same size shoe. Because there are only a certain number of manufactured shoes, the tread design amongst shoes is often common as well. When we did this lab in the classroom last year, a lot of people were wearing Vans, and it didn't really matter what style of Van they were wearing. When they came up and made their shoe print of their own shoe, every Van shoe had exactly the same tread design. So again, tread design or tread pattern is good for narrowing down to a smaller group, but may not, again, be specific enough to individualize one person. Shoe style is what we think about when we think, is it an athletic shoe? Is it a flip-flop? Is it a boot? And so that's what is meant by shoe style. And again, many people have boots. Many people have flip-flops. And so again, it's helpful, but it's not the end-all be-all. So these are considered to be class characteristics. However, what we really are looking for as a forensics investigator are the individual characteristics. They're also known as accidental characteristics. So I'm going to pause for a minute and give your brain a chance to think what might be some things other than size, shoe brand, shoe style, shoe tread pattern that would be something more specific to one person. Okay, let's see how you did. So here are the individual characteristics. So just because people travel in different places and walk differently, they're going to have differences in what's called the wear patterns of their tread. So there may be tears, which are ragged cuts, or cuts, which are clean incisions, or even little nicks, little small slices in the tread. Again, because different people walk in different places, their shoes are of different ages, and they all walk somewhat differently. So that again is gait, the way you walk, but that creates different wear patterns on the tread. Also, too, unknown to certain people, objects can get embedded in the tread. I once had a bulletin board pin that was stuck in the bottom of my shoe, and I walked around on it all day, and it didn't go in my shoe far enough where I could feel the prick of it on my foot. But I kept wondering why my foot felt kind of slick in one area. Well, it's because the head of the bulletin board pin was, on the bottom of my shoe. So that would be unusual, but people do traipse through grass and they walk on stones and they're in different kinds of soil. And this kind of material gets stuck in the tread of the shoe. And so this can be used to track someone. It's called tracking data. And that can tell you where the suspect has been. And of course, that can be really helpful if you're using shoe print evidence to try to solve a crime. And then I also wanted you to know that even though I previously said size was generally class, and it is, um, if the shoes are all of the same brand and the same style and the same tread pattern, and you don't see any specific individual wear patterns, but they're all of a different size, then that does make size an individualizing characteristic. So you kind of have to be open-minded and kind of think of some of these things in a variety of different ways. So that is the end of our PowerPoint. And so I hope that was helpful. And I'm going to turn that PowerPoint into an ed puzzle. And so again, as you're watching the PowerPoint and you're being asked to stop by the ed puzzle to answer questions, please make sure that you go back and rewind if needed. I don't want you guys just guessing about the answer because, if we were in class together and I'm asking you questions like I like to do, I wouldn't just accept a wrong answer. I'd ask you to try to find a way to get the correct answer. So again, when you read the instructions for this activity, I'm requiring that you get an 80% or better on the ed puzzle. Otherwise, I'm not going to, that sounds threatening. I need to reset your score so that you can try it again, because I really, really want you guys to know this information. So hope you find the ed puzzle to be easy to do. I don't think the material's that terribly difficult. And as always, if you have any questions, be sure to contact me.